Today we're doing section 13.5, which is law of cosines. Sometimes a problem is not set up in such a way that you can use law of sines, but law of cosines is like law of sines in the sense that it's not used with a right triangle. These are on triangles that are not right triangles. So the law of cosines is used in a situation that might look something like this. 47 degrees, 22 and 27. Okay, in order to use law of sines on that, I would have to know an angle and the side opposite. You can see that I do not have the ability to do that in this problem. So there has to be another way to be able to solve this problem besides using law of sines, and there's a law of cosines. Now I'm going to set up law of cosines using letters, but again, there's nothing special about the letters. So a squared, the side opposite the angle you know, is equal to b squared plus c squared minus 2 times b times c times the cosine of angle, let me abbreviate that, of angle A. Okay, so look at the setup. This is an unknown side, but this always matches up with that. This is the side opposite that angle. These are the other two sides, not the sides opposite that angle. That's the way it's set up every time. Don't forget, if you directly put it in your calculator, to put parentheses around that, because the calculator doesn't know to multiply all that together before it subtracts here. So based on this particular problem, a squared is equal to 22 squared plus 27 squared minus 2 times 22 times 27 times the cosine of angle 47. Not angle 47, but just at 47 degrees. So you can stick that into your calculator exactly like it is, okay? 22 squared plus 27 squared minus parentheses 2 times 22 times 27 times the cosine of 47, and then you're going to have to take the square root of that. You're going to end up getting, if you just put that into your calculator, let's do the 22 squared plus 27 squared minus parentheses 2 times 22 times 27 times the cosine of 47. I'm going to get 402.786 rounded off. Well, that's a squared. So then I have to turn around and take the square root of that, and I'm going to get a is equal to approximately 20.1. Okay, so that's that point right there. Okay, now at that point, let's say they told me to solve this triangle. At that point, personally, I would switch over to law of sines, because now I have an angle and a side opposite that angle that I can use to solve for the other two angles. So going back to law of sines, the sine of 47 degrees over 20.1, let's say we're going to do B, is equal to the sine of angle B, side across from it, is 22. So now I'm going to cross product. So I have 20.1 times the sine of angle B is equal to 22 times the sine of 47 degrees. I'm going to divide by the 20.1. And remember, in order to get the measurement of an angle, I'm going to use the inverse. So angle B is equal to the inverse sine of this whole thing right here, rather than rewrite it, because I think I'm probably going off of the video. And I'm going to get angle B, so now you're back doing what you did on the homework from before. I'm going to get a 53.2 degrees. That's angle B. Now, to find angle C, remember, you just take 180 minus 47 minus 53.2, and I'm going to get an answer there of 79.8 degrees. So you use law of cosines just to begin your problem, but then you finish it with law of sines and other things that you need to do. All right, let's try another one. All right, let's say they just tell me A is equal to 38 degrees. So there's an angle. B is equal to 6, and C is equal to 10. Again, I would recommend just drawing out a triangle. Then I would label A, B, C. Then I would put my parts in it. 38 degrees, opposite little angle B is little b, so that's 6 right there. Opposite angle C is little c, or 10. You can see I don't have the measurement of the side across from the angle I know. So I have to use law of cosines. So the angle, or the side I don't know, is A. So I'm going to say A squared is equal to 10 squared plus 6 squared, those other two sides, minus 2 times 10 times 6 times the cosine of 38 degrees. Now remember, when you do this all out on the calculator, you still have got to take the square root of it to get to the A. So that's going to give you A is equal to 6.4. Then you're going to switch over to law of sines. The sine of 38 degrees over 64, let's do B, is equal to the sine of angle B over 6. So I have 64 times the sine of angle B is equal to 6 times the sine of 38 degrees. I'm going to divide by 64. And I'm going to find out that angle B is equal to the inverse sine of 6 times the sine of 38 degrees over 64. Make sure that whole thing is in parentheses so to take the inverse sine of it. And I'm going to get 35.2 degrees. Well, that is angle B. And then angle C I would get by taking 180 minus 38 minus 35.2 degrees, which is going to give me an answer for C of 106.5 degrees. Okay? All right, there's one other type of problem, but it's doing the exact same thing. Sometimes they give you all 3 sides, but they don't give you any angles. So you still are going to have to use the law of cosines to begin with. But you're going to have to do some inverses right at the beginning. So let's say they tell me P equals 29, Q equals 31, and R equals 48. All right? So I'm going to draw it out again. I think I better change colors. That's kind of fading a little bit. Might not be able to see it on the video. So P, Q, I need a capital Q, and R. Side across from P is 29. Side across from Q is 31. Side across from R is 48. I don't know any angles. None whatsoever. So I just pick an angle, okay? Let's say we want to go in alphabetical order, so we want angle P. Well, if we choose angle P, then that means I need little p squared out here, okay? So then I would have, and I'm just going to do the formula here, so this would be q squared plus r squared minus 2 times q times r times the cosine of angle P. Okay, if this is little p, this is angle P. So right now my unknown is actually that. So I'm going to fill in all my spots here. 29 squared is equal to q, which is 31 squared, plus r, which is 48 squared, minus 2 times 31 times 48 times the cosine of angle P. Now be careful here, okay? The problem is set up the same way, but the solving of it is a little different because remember my unknown is back here. So I have to get rid of everything except for that unknown. So my 29 squared is 841. Then I'm going to do that part. Okay, 31 squared plus 48 squared is going to give me 3,265. Then I'm going to do this part. 2 times 31 times 48 is going to give me 2,976 times the cosine of angle P. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract that and take it to the other side. 841 minus 3,265 is negative 2,424 equals negative 2,976 times the cosine of angle P. I've got to get rid of this, so I'm going to divide by negative 2,976, negative 2,976. Okay, I'm going to have to, if I'm finding an angle, I'm going to take the inverse cosine of that. Negative 2,424 over negative 2,976. Okay, so inverse cosine of, you wouldn't have to put the negatives because a double negative is going to cancel out right there and there. So that's going to give me 35.5 degrees. Okay, so that, remember, is angle P. So now I've got 35.5 degrees right there. Now I can switch and use law of sines. Okay, so now I've got one angle and I've got the side opposite that angle. So you can see those are a little bit harder, but you got to find the angle at the beginning. Okay, so the sine of 35.5, you could continue to do cosine, but I think law of sines is easier. Over to 29, let's say I want to find Q, okay, is the sine of angle Q over 31. Cross product, so you're going to have 29 times the sine of angle Q is equal to 31 times the sine of 35.5. I'm going to divide by 29. And I'm going to find out that angle Q, because I'm trying to find the angle, is equal to inverse sine of 31 times the sine of 35.5 divided by 29. Okay, and when I do that, and you've got to make sure you have a closing parenthesis so it takes the inverse sine of that whole thing. When I do that, I find that angle Q is equal to 38.4 degrees. Now, to find angle R, I'm going to take 180 minus 35.5 minus 38.4, and I'm going to get 106.1 degrees. Okay? All right. I'm going to have you try one, pause the video, and come back and we'll work it out. Again, this is going to be 3 sides and no angles. So it's going to be just like the one we just did. And after this, I'll give you your homework. All right, that's what you know. Work the problem, pause the video, and then come back. All right, I'm going to draw out my triangle. A, B, C, 15, 18, and 19. I think I'm going to find A first. So I'm going to take my side opposite of A. So 15 squared is equal to 19 squared plus 18 squared minus 2 times 19 times 18 times the cosine of angle A. Let's do these out. I think I actually already have them. So this is 225, and this is 685, and this is 684. Do not subtract that. You must take this to the other side. You can't combine these two things together because that is multiplied by the cosine of A. Don't make that mistake. It's a very common mistake. So the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 685 from both sides. I'm going to get negative 460 is equal to negative 684 times the cosine of angle A. Most of the time, both of those two things are going to be negative. Okay, I'm going to divide by negative 684. And I'm going to define angle A. It's going to be the inverse cosine of negative 460 divided by negative 684. And it's going to give me an angle A of 47.7 degrees. Now personally, I'm going to switch and do law of sines. So the sine of 47.7 degrees over 15 is equal to the sine of angle B over 18. I'm going to cross product and get 18 times the sine. Actually, let me do it the other way. Hold on. 15 times the sine of angle B, okay, this times this, equals 18 times the sine of 47.7 degrees. I'm going to divide by 15. And so I'm going to find, let me give myself some space here, that angle B, because I've got to find an angle, so it's going to be the inverse. So inverse sine of 18 times the sine of 47.7 degrees divided by 15. Okay, I'm going to get an answer there of 62.6. Now you might be a little bit different than that. Like if you had tried to find C first, your rounding might be different, but as long as it's really close there, you are right. So 62.6 here, I'm going to take 180 minus 47.7 minus 26.6, and I'm going to get 69.7 degrees. Okay, and then I've solved it. All right, your homework on law of cosines, but you're still using law of sines as well, is page 802 through 803, 13 through 29, odd. Okay.